Welcome, students. I am Nancy Southerland. I am eager to begin the discussion of Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is entitled Buying and Disposing. Chapter 9 explores group and situational influences on decision making. We'll cover situational aspects like the retail environment, the influence of others, and how collective decisions are made. Chapter objectives include: many factors at the time of purchase dramatically influence the consumer decision-making process. The information a store's layout, website, or salespeople provides strongly influences a purchasing decision. Other people and groups, especially those that possess social power, influence our decisions. Further objectives are: we seek out others who share our interests in products or services. Our desire to be consistent with other people motivates us to mimic what they buy and use. Marketers often need to understand consumers' behavior rather than a consumer's behavior. The final objectives are: the decision-making process differs when people choose what to buy on behalf of an organization rather than for personal use. Our traditional notions about families are outdated. Members of a family unit play different roles and have different amounts of influence when the family makes purchase decisions. Learning Objective 1 states many factors at the time of purchase dramatically influence the consumer's decision-making process. There are many factors that affect our purchases, including emotion. For instance, Yankovic Partners found that buying a car is the most anxiety-provoking retail experience for consumers. Figure 9.1 illustrates that many contextual factors affect our choice. These might include mood, whether we feel time pressure to make a purchase, and the reason we need the product. Salespeople could play a role in our decisions too. A consumer's physical and social environment affects her motives to use a product as well as how she will evaluate them. These cues include the immediate environment and the type and number of other consumers who are there. The sheer presence or absence of co-consumers is a product attribute. The presence of many people can increase physiological arousal levels so that our experiences seem more intense. Also, the type of consumers who are in a store affects our perceptions. We infer things about a store from the customers there. Time is one of consumers' most precious resources. We may change what we want to buy based on temporal influences like what time it is and how much time is left before we need a product. Economic time points out that time is an economic variable. Think, time is money. People's priorities determine their time style. Your time style determines how you spend your time resource. Some people feel that they are time poor. That means that they simply feel that they do not have sufficient time. It may be just a perception, because people actually have more time free from work than ever before. But there are just so many options now. A study looked at how the time styles of a group of American women influenced their conception choices. The researchers found 4 dimensions of time. The social dimension refers to the individual's categorization of time as either time for me or time with for others. The temporal orientation dimension depicts the relative significance individuals attach to past, present, or future. The planning orientation dimension alludes to different time management styles, varying on a continuum from analytic to spontaneous. The polychronic orientation dimension distinguishes between people who prefer to do one thing at a time from those who multitask. Those same researchers found that women viewed time in different ways, and they developed 5 metaphors to capture how women view time. Women who view time as a pressure cooker are analytical and monochronic. They usually feel like they are under pressure, and they shop in methodical manner. Women who view time as a map are also analytical, but they focus on the future and tend to multitask. They tend to engage in extensive information search and comparison shopping. Women who view time as a mirror are analytical and polychronic, but they have a past temporal orientation, as opposed to the time as a map woman. These women are risk-averse, and they stick to brands they trust. Women who view time as a river tend to be very spontaneous with a focus on the present. They go shopping on the spur of the moment. Women who view time as a feast are analytical planners with a present focus. They view time as something that allows them to enjoy life. For this reason, they seek out opportunities for hedonic consumption. Let us self-reflect in order to learn. In what ways do you experience time poverty? What products do you purchase because of the sense of time poverty? Learning Objective 2 states the information a store's layout, website, or salespeople provide strongly influences a purchase decision. As consumers make decisions, they are influenced by the situation they are in too. The shopping experience is affected by how pleasant our environment is perceived and our level of arousal during the consumption experience. We can enjoy or not enjoy and feel stimulated or not. Clearly, our mood can affect the experience. This figure illustrates the influence of the 2 basic dimensions of pleasure and arousal. Evaluations would be more positive when our mood state is positive. We can segment consumers in terms of their shopping orientation or general attitudes about shopping. These orientations vary depending on the particular product categories and store types we consider. The motives for shopping are listed on the slide. Many people shop for the social benefits. Shopping areas are areas to hang out with friends and family. Stores frequently offer specialized goods that allow people with shared interests to communicate. Shopping centers are a natural place to congregate. Shopping may make people feel important. Some people pride themselves on their knowledge of the marketplace. The experience of acquiring the good may be quite different offline versus online. Electronic marketers can reach people anywhere, but there are also issues as well. This slide lists the benefits and limitations on online retail sites. Let us engage in reflection. Will e-commerce eventually replace traditional brick-and-mortar retailing? Why or why not? What are the benefits that traditional retail stores provide that e-commerce cannot provide? Retail environments are important for attracting shoppers and keeping them in the stores. Innovative merchants use 4 kinds of theming techniques. These are listed on the slide. Landscape themes rely on associations with images of nature, animals, and the physical body. Bass Pro Shops is an example of a landscape theme. Marketplace themes build on associations with man-made places. The Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas is an example of a marketscape. Cyberspace themes build on information and communications technology. eBay uses this approach. Mindscape themes draw on abstract ideas and concepts, fantasy, and often possess spiritual overtones. Day spas might reflect a spiritual theme. Stores can have very clear personalities. This is a reflection exercise. An image shown in the book is a drawing of how one consumer depicted an impulse buyer. How would you depict yourself as an impulse buyer? A buyer-seller situation is like many dyadic encounters. During the relationship, the parties establish their own roles in the relationship through identity negotiation. Salespeople can be more effective if they have authority and expertise, and even if they have incidental similarities, such as a shared experience to the buyer. Learning Objective 3 states other people and groups, especially those who possess some kind of social power, influence our decisions. This chapter opens with the story of Zachary. Zachary leads a secret life. During the week, he is a stock analyst, but on the weekends, he's out on the road with his Harley Davidson. Zachary's group of biker friends is an important part of his identity, and this membership influences many buying decisions. The biker group is a reference group. A reference group is an actual or imaginary individual or group conceived of as having significant relevance upon an individual's evaluations, aspirations, or behavior. Social power exists when the one person admires the qualities of another and tries to copy the reference behavior. It's important to marketers because consumers voluntarily modify what they do and buy to identify with the referent. Information power exists when someone knows something others would like to know. Legitimate power is granted through true authority in a situation. For instance, police officers have legitimate power. Expert power accrues to a person who is an expert in a particular field. Due to their expertise, others will be influenced by them. Reward power refers to the influence held by a person who has the ability to offer a reward. Coercive power is the opposite of reward power. It's held by someone who has the ability to punish. As we reflect, for each type of social power, source of influence, share an example of a time you experienced that form of influence. Learning Objective 4 states we seek out others who share interest in products or services. Sometimes groups matter more than at other times. We are not as likely, for instance, to take others' preferences into account when we choose simple products or products we can try before we buy. Knowing what others prefer at a general level can influence us. Reference groups influence us in 3 ways. Table 9.3 describes these influences. The information influence means that others provide information on consumer choices. The utilitarian influence means that our choices are influenced by important others. The value expressive influence means that the individual uses the consumer choice to express values consistent or not with the group. Brand Fest are held by many companies like Mini and Harley-Davidson. The festivals enable consumers to interact with others who share a similar brand passion. In brand communities, experienced members coach newer members. As this process occurs, the community created added value for being a part of the community. Figure 9.4 illustrates how value is created and socialized throughout the community. Can you apply this process to a community of which you are a part? Membership reference groups are people we know like our families, friendship groups, and colleagues. Because we tend to compare ourselves with similar others, many promotional strategies include ordinary people. Seeing the consumption activities of others acts as a form of social influence. Aspirational reference groups are people we admire. They may be successful business people, athletes, or performers. Several factors make it more likely that we will be a member of a reference group. First, as the physical distance between people decreases and opportunity for interaction increase, they are more likely to form relationships. This physical nearness is called propinquity. We come to like persons or things if we see them more often. This is known as mere exposure phenomenon. Cohesiveness refers to the degree to which members of a group are attracted to each other and how much each values their membership in the group. Reference groups can affect our decisions both positively and negatively. Sometimes we deliberately do the opposite if we want to distance ourselves from avoidance groups. People in larger groups have fewer constraints on behavior. De-individuation occurs when our individual identities are submerged in the group. In other words, we don't stay out alone so we may behave differently. At a costume party, we may act wilder than we would in our everyday lives. The change in our shopping behavior in groups is the reason some brands use home shopping parties. Why do we tend to conform to the pressure of groups? The primary culprits are listed in the slide. Culture pressure refers to how different cultures encourage conformity to a greater or lesser extent. For instance, the Japanese society emphasizes collective well-being and group loyalty over individual needs. Individuals may believe that the group will apply sanctions to punish non-conforming behaviors. This is the fear captured in the factor fear of defiance. According to the principle of least interest, the person who is least committed to staying in a relationship has the most power because that party doesn't care as much as the other person rejects him. As groups gain in power, compliance increases. The trait susceptibility to interpersonal influence refers to an individual's need to have others think highly of him or her. Let us reflect. How can marketers use the characteristics that explain conformity to persuade individuals to follow consumer trends? Learning Objective 6 states marketers often need to understand consumers' behavior rather than a consumer's behavior. This section of the chapter deals with situations where more than one person chooses the products or services that multiple consumers use. We will look at two major group decision contexts: organizations and families. Depending on the decision in question, the choice may include some or all group members, and different group members may play different roles. The initiator role is played by the person who brings up the idea or identifies the need. The person who conducts the information search and controls the flow of information available to the group is the gatekeeper. The person who tries to sway the outcome of the decision is the influencer. The person who actually makes the purchase is the buyer. Those who will actually use the product are the users. Learning Objective 7 states the decision-making process differs when people choose what to buy on behalf of an organization rather than for personal use. This objective deals specifically with organizational decision-making as one of the types of collective decision-making covered in the chapter. Organizational buyers have a lot of responsibility. These individuals buy from business-to-business marketers. Although there are similarities between consumer and organizational buying, there are some differences. These are listed on the slide. For reflection, assume that you are a sales representative for a large company that markets laptop computers. List all the people that may be involved in making the decision to purchase from you. Try to match all the people to their possible decision roles as outlined on the previous slide. Organizational buyers are influenced by several factors, including the psychological characteristics of those involved in the buying decision, external stimuli such as the nature of the industry and the organization, cultural factors, and the level of risk and complexity involved in the decision. The level of complexity depends upon the level of information the buyer must gather prior to the decision, the seriousness of the decision and the evaluation of alternatives, and how familiar the buyer is with the type of purchase. When we apply the buy-class theory of purchasing, we divide organizational buying decisions into three types, ranging from least to most complex. How much cognitive effort goes into making a decision affects what type of decision the buyer is making. The three basic types of decisions are straight rebuy, modified rebuy, and new task. The straight rebuy is a habitual decision. A modified rebuy involves limited decision making. A new task involves extensive problem solving because the company has not made a similar decision already. For reflection, summarize the buy-class model of purchasing. How do decisions differ within each class? In 2010, our culture marked a milestone. Married couples represented just 40% of American households. In contrast, back in 1950, 78% of households were occupied by married couples. New census data also revealed that just a fifth of households were composed of traditional families, married couples with children, compared to 43% in 1950. Does this mean that families are obsolete? The reality is that many other types of families continue to grow rapidly. The extended family was once the most common family unit. It consisted of 3 generations, living together and including grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Then the nuclear family became more common. Now there have been many changes in the American family structure such that the family unit could contain a number of variations on membership and size. Further, the U.S. Census Bureau now defines a household not by the relationships of the people who live there, but simply as any occupied housing unit. As the modern family unit changes, we have new terms to classify some of the common family shifts. Boomerang kids are adult children living at home with one or more parents. Adults who have their elderly children live with them are known as the sandwich generation. Let us do a reflection exercise to increase our learning. How does the changing nature of the family affect marketing mix decisions marketers make to target families and family members? "92% of pet owners consider their pets to be family members. 83% call themselves mommy or daddy when talking to their pets." Many factors affect what a family spends, including the number of people in the family, their ages, and whether one, two, or more adults work outside the home. Two especially important factors that determine how a couple spends time and money are whether they have children and whether the woman works. The family life cycle concept enables marketers to segment households. Researchers over the years have proposed several models to describe family life cycle changes, but with limited effect because most fail to take into account trends like the changing role of women, childless and delayed child marriages, alternative family styles, and single-parent households. 4 variables are used to describe the changes a family undergoes: age, marital status, whether children are in the home, and the ages of children in the home. We also have to consider any couple as a household, whether or not they are traditional husband and wife. This is a strategic reflection exercise. For the following products, discuss how having children or not might affect the choices a couple makes. What do such variations mean for marketers? Groceries, cars, vacations. Learning Objective 9 states members of a family unit play different roles and have different amounts of influence when the family makes purchase decisions. Families make 2 types of decisions: consensual and accommodative. Consensual purchase decisions are those for which members agree on the desired purchase, differing only in terms of how it will be achieved. Accommodative purchase decisions are those for which members have different preferences or priorities and they cannot agree on a purchase to satisfy the minimum expectations of all involved. Interpersonal need, product involvement, and utility, responsibility, and power all aid in resolving decision conflicts in families. When couples first marry, they tend to make more joint decisions, but over time, they begin to specialize in decisions. Wives still have the most say on grocery purchases, clothes, furniture, home electronics, and things for children. In traditional views of family, men made the money and women spent it. Today, it is primarily the woman who manages the role of family financial officer, whether or not she is a primary breadwinner. Marketers are also aware of the tendency for working mothers to struggle with a juggling lifestyle. In general, 4 factors appear to determine the degree to which one or the other spouse or both jointly decide what to buy. Couples who believe in traditional sex role stereotypes tend to make individual decisions for sex-typed products, those that are considered feminine or masculine. The spouse who contributes more resources to the family has the greater influence. Couples who have gained experience as a decision-making unit make individual decisions more frequently. Middle-class families make more joint decisions than do either higher or lower-class families. The ideal view of joint decision-making is that both the husband and wife participate equally. According to this view, both would act rationally and weigh alternatives. In reality, spousal decision-making is more about reaching decisions than making decisions. One common technique for simplifying decisions is to use heuristics. Couples can define their area of common preference on specific dimensions. They can assign certain duties or decision components to the person who's best at that task. Lastly, they can make concessions to each other based on the wishes and concerns of one another. For reflection, what exposure have you had to family decisions made in your own family? Can you see the patterns discussed in the chapter in these decisions? Give an example. You are tasked with the following chapter summary. Many factors affect the consumer decision-making process. The retail environment and experience is a strong influence. Other people and groups, especially those with social power, influence our decisions. We seek out others who share our interests in products. Marketers need to understand behavior in collective decision-making situations. The decision-making process differs when people choose what to buy on behalf of an organization rather than for personal use. Our traditional notions of family have changed. Family members play different roles and varying levels of influence. Thank you for listening to the lecture of Consumer Behavior, Chapter 9, entitled Buying and Disposing. I am Nancy Southerland. I am eager to engage you.